Against the Clock, Adobe Photoshop CC 2017 release, the Professional Portfolio. This is Project 3, Stage 1, Retouching Damaged Images. Image repair is the process of fixing scratches, removing dust, making tears disappear, and generally putting broken or damaged pictures back together again. Retouching is different. That's the technique of changing an image by adding something that wasn't there or removing something from the image. Damage can come from a wide range of sources: creases, scratches, water spots, tape marks. Other image problems like photographic grain are simply a natural part of photography. And dust is very common and occurs most often when photographs are scanned. There are many different ways to approach image repair, and as you complete these exercises, you will use several tools to clean up damage in this portrait from the 1940s. We're going to remove grain using the blur and sharpen technique. You should have downloaded the museum files and extracted those into your WIP folder. You can access the museum folder and open the file Rossi JPEG. When you look at this image, you'll see that there's a corner that's been torn off, scratches, a fold, there's some water damage on the side, and if you zoom in, you'll be able to see that the grain is very prominent in this image. We're going to start by cleaning up the grain. Grain is caused by the microscopic grains of light-sensitive material that's present on photographic film. You will also find something similar to this that's more noise than grain on digital images as well. Although there are some techniques to remove noise using noise filters, we're going to use the blur and sharpen technique to clean this image up. We're going to go to Filter and select Blur, Gaussian Blur. We want to take a look at the image right above the eye. Make sure that the preview is checked in the dialog box and change the radius field to 2 pixels. Did you see how the image softened? We took out the areas of fine detail and blurred them. To remove the photographic grain, you have to blur the entire image. We will use sharpening to restore some of that lost edge detail. Select OK on the Gaussian blur, and now select Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. If you don't see the entire dialog box like this, make sure that you click the arrow to the left of the shadows and highlights so that you can show all of the options. In Remove, make sure you've chosen Gaussian Blur. We applied the Gaussian blur to remove the heavy noise. We're going to use the Smart Sharpen filter to remove the blur and restore some of the image detail. Lens blur would detect edges and details and provide finer sharpening of detail and reduce halos. Motion blur attempts to reduce the effects of blur that's caused by camera movement. We want to set our amount to 250%. The amount defines how much sharpening is applied to the image. A higher amount will increase the contrast between edge pixels, which will give the appearance of greater sharpness. You need to be careful on this because too high of an amount can result in halos at the apparent edges. We're going to set the radius to 2 pixels. The radius defines the number of pixels around edge pixels that will be affected. Higher radius values result in more obvious sharpening. We're going to reduce the noise slider down to 18%. Reduced noise helps to avoid sharpening any noise that still exists in the image. In the highlights section, we're going to set the fade amount to 25%. Fade amount adjusts the amount of sharpening. By reducing the sharpening, we help to further remove the noise that remains in the lighter portions. Tonal width controls the range of tones that will be modified, and radius defines the size of the area around each pixel that's used to determine whether a pixel is a shadow or a highlight. Click OK to accept the changes, and save your file as Rossi, and remember to include your initials. Be sure to read the section on page 167 covering the shake reduction. We are now going to proceed on page 168 with healing severe scratches. The Spot Healing Brush tool allows you to remove imperfections by blending surrounding pixels. The Healing Brush tool, which is located underneath it, has a similar function, except you can define the source pixels that will be used to heal an area. The Patch tool allows you repair an area with pixels from another area by dragging the selection area. Position the image so that you can see the man's forehead. Select the Spot Healing Brush tool in the Tools panel, and in the Options bar, choose Option Proximity Match. Open the Brush Presets and define a 20 pixel brush with 100% hardness. The proximity match method uses pixels around the edge of the selection to find an image area to use for a patch for the selected area. If you use Create Texture, it uses all the pixels in the selection to create a texture for repairing the area. Content Aware mode attempts to match the detail in surrounding areas while healing pixels. This method doesn't work well for areas with hard edges or for sharp contrast. And if you select Sample All Layers, the tool will pull pixel from all of the visible layers. With your cursor over the orange-white spot on the man's forehead, click, and that will heal it. Scroll down to the chin and choose the Healing Brush tool, which is located under the Spot Healing Brush. Make sure that your brush size is still around 20 pixels. The Mode menu determines the blending mode used to heal an area. The default option of Normal samples the source color and transparency to blend the new pixel smoothly into the area being healed. The Replace mode preserves texture in the healed area when you use a soft brush. Multiple Screen, Darken, Lighten, Color, and Luminosity modes have the same function as the blending modes for specific layers and brushes. Our source is Sample, so what we're going to do is put the cursor right below the area that we want to change and hold down our Option key so we can sample the pixels below it, and click your mouse button. Now release the option, and you can see it's carrying pixels with it, and all we have to do now is cover the blemished area, click, and we have replaced that area with the pixels right below it. If you missed a little bit, I've got a little section there that I didn't quite get. All you need to do is click again. It's going to, as you click, do you see when you hold the mouse button down, do you see the little X that comes up below the brush cursor? That indicates the area I am sampling from. This is a good point to save again. Move up to the upper corner that's got the tear in it, and we're going to repair this. You need to use your rectangle tool, make sure that your feather is set to 0, and draw a selection to include that torn corner. I'm going to actually scroll down and pick up this section that's got some damage to it as well. Go to Edit and choose Fill. Under Contents, you're going to select Content Aware. The Content Aware is going to pick up pixels from the surrounding area. So we're going to say OK to that. The computer figures out what the colors should be and does as best a job as it can to match the surrounding areas. It's a good option. Remember that it's there, and it works very well for this slightly mottled gradient that's the background. Now deselect, and we're going to do the same thing to remove the crease on the right side and the water damage on the left edge. There's a little spot right there that's not listed in the book, but I'm going to go ahead and correct that as well. And then deselect. We can't use the content aware to correct this scratch that's on his shoulder, and if you try to, it's going to do some really strange things. But for this, the clone stamp is going to work a whole lot better. The clone stamp tool paints one part of an image over another part, and on this particular image it's going to work quite well because we have this slope of his shoulder in there. We're going to select the clone stamp tool and then open the brush preset picker in the options bar and define a 50 pixel brush with 50% hardness. We want this to blend on the sides. We don't want any harsh edges. Hard edge brushes can give you harsh lines, and you will see exactly where you did the repairs. On the options bar, make sure that aligned is checked, because as with the healing brush tool, you can define the source that will be cloned. The difference is that whole pixels are copied, not just their color values. So we're going to put the cursor over the edge that we want to reproduce and Alt-click to define the source. So we're going to pick up a source right around here so that we can match the slope on the collar. And now you can see that that is loaded into my brush, and I'm going to click to cover that area. We're going to use the content aware again, so pick up your lasso tool and draw around this area with the scratch above his shoulder, and again go to Edit, Fill, Content Aware, deselect, use Control D to deselect, and then use the same method to remove the scratches. We couldn't do this with the line, but we want to get that pattern repeated here. So again, we're going to select this and Edit, Fill, Content Aware, and deselect.